Well, here we are. I'm George. This is a Purple Team workshop. Love purple. You see my purple unicorn shirt. Um, there, there are rumors that we're going to have a swag store coming out very, very soon, with all proceedings going to a nonprofit. So you'll be able to get your swag on as well. Shout out to Scythe for sponsoring this. I'm going to show you the lab environment that you get to use, and it costs you nothing. So we got to give them a shout out. And yeah, let's get to it. This is me. I'm George. I'm the Chief Technology Officer here at Scythe. Been here for about 6 months now. Prior to that, I led the offensive security team at Citigroup. Started doing vulnerability assessment, then pen testing, then built the red team, and then started doing some purple team functions. Love purple. We use Scythe there, and the opportunity came, and I jumped over to the vendor side. No, the vendor side. So here I am. Love giving in contributions to the industry. So we definitely do share a lot of stuff out there. So the purple team exercise framework, we're going to go through that here. That's totally free. The C2 matrix, also free. This workshop free. I teach for SANS, which is not free, as you all know, but been doing that for about 10 years. Love it. Actually just finished updating my course. It's Security 564, Red Team Exercises and Adversary Emulations. Did other stuff like CVSS version 3 and 3.1. I was a voting member there. So back in my vulnerability assessment days. Also wrote a framework with the Global Financial Markets Association and part of a bunch of stuff. So yeah, that's me. But enough about me. What are we here for? Well, this is a hands-on workshop, right? Sometimes you hear workshop and you think, yeah, we're gonna do hands-on, and then it's just a non-hands-on workshop where you get to hear me for 3 hours. That is not the case. You do not, you will not be hearing my voice for 3 hours, which is great. What we've done is we created a lab environment for you to play the cyber threat intelligence role, the red team role, and the blue team role in an isolated environment. So it's going to be a lot of fun. We'll obviously walk before we run. If you already know how to do all this stuff, then I mean, it's self-paced. So everyone's going to get their own isolated environment, which is fantastic, because if you break something, you only break it for you. And if you do break something, you will be able to reset it back to how it was. So big shout out to VMware. That's a platform we're using. It's called VMware Learning Platform. We're one of the early adopters there. And you should have all received an email by now saying, hey, this is your unique URL to log into the workshop, right? That's why we said you have to use your real email, right? I know you don't like giving us your real email, but you have to, because that is how you're getting your unique URL. So hopefully everyone read that when they signed up to Zoom. If you didn't, I will take care of you in about an hour. But the rest of you should have gotten. It comes from events@scythe.io. It says, dear student, the Purple Team Workshop class has started. This is your link for access. And it's a URL just for you. Don't share that, because other people are going to get access to it. So feel free to check your email. Feel free to click on it. We have exactly 3 hours of that environment. So that hour started at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time about 6 minutes ago, and it's going to go on for 3 hours, right? Within that environment, each of you has 4 systems. There's only really 2 you interact with. One is Unicorn. So if you know anything about Scythe, we are the unicorns. There's, again, the unicorn on the shirt. This is purple, even though the light looks blue. This is the purple shirt. We have a blue shirt and a red shirt. So that is going to be your console. You're going to log into that. It's a Windows member server, which means there's also a domain controller, just like in most organizations. There's also a two attack platforms there. One is a Windows server that's running the Scythe attack platform. The other is the SANS Slingshot C2 Matrix Edition that has 8 other command and control frameworks already pre-installed, and also has vector. So all that's been set up for you so that you just log in and start using it, right? And that's what we're gonna do. So what are you doing here? Well, we're learning, right? That's the whole thing about information security. And we love that, right? We love sharing information. And we're always learning new stuff. That's the beauty of this, right? So people learn through different methods, right? Some of you learn by listening, some of you learn by seeing it, and some of you learn by doing. And obviously the combination of those works out well, right? So you are going to get all 3 of those here today. And the whole goal as well is to take this back to work, right? Understand the value of purple teaming and share it with others in your organization. Propose building a purple team program and follow a proven industry framework. Oh yeah, you are going to get CPE credit. So I already see a question there. Are we getting certs for attending? Yes, yes, yes. You're going to get CPE credits, 3 CPE credits. And that is going to be within the platform. So you actually have to log into the VMware Learning Platform, right? Get the hands-on part. And the final step is going to be for you to gain those CPEs that I know a lot of you need. So what are we learning? Well, we're learning all about purple teaming, and some of you may have heard of purple teaming, right? It's our very creative way of saying the red team, which does offense, and the blue team working together. We're going to jump into that a little bit more. Yes, easier said than done. That is correct. So we're going to go through the purple team exercise framework, kind of figure out how we got here, right? Someone didn't just like wake up and dream this up in one day. We evolved. I'm going to tell you our story, how I evolved to this. I've talked to a lot of people in the industry, large organizations, and even consulting companies that have kind of reaching this area, right? So it's pretty new and hot. So I love it. I'll share frameworks and methodologies, of course, because if you're going to propose something in a professional organization, you kind of need to show the value and prove why this is important. Suggested browser for connecting to a lab, Chrome is what I use. Yeah, and no iPads, right? No Safari on an iPad, right? You are going to have access to a full VM or a number of VMs. So Chrome is what I've used. So should work well. And yeah, we're going to cover cyber threat intelligence. We're going to cover how to prepare for one of these exercises. If you're proposing this at your work, we're going to cover the flow of it, doing lessons learned, and then we'll get to hands-on portion. Now, if you've already heard this, right, because I have given this workshop as just a 1-hour webcast and lecture format, feel free to go get started, right? If you've watched my video on this already, you can go and use the lab. The lab has manuals and all that. So I can actually show you that. Give me 1 second. Where's my email? What email did I use? Too many email addresses. Okay, it's my private email. So hold on. I'm going to walk you through what this is going to look like. Yes, this is all recorded, so you can actually search for it and find the recording already. All right, so you get an email that looks like this, right? Purple Team Workshop, VMware Learning, docket there. You have a URL. You click on the URL, and that's going to take you to your environment. So I'm going to walk you through. In the event you don't want to listen to me, you can do all of these. So here we go. Give it a couple seconds to launch, right? Let's be a little patient. Will we share the slides? Yes, of course, we're going to share the slides. What's up, Andy? Yes, we will have access to a recording, Adrian. Cool, cool, cool. So, all right. This is what it should look like if you clicked on the link. And the only reason I'm walking you through this is because I know some of you are going to be impatient and not going to listen to me talking. So just a walkthrough of where you are, right? This is obviously a web app, tells you how much time you have left up there. Over on the left, you have your consoles. You have access to 2 consoles, Unicorn, which is a Windows console, and the Sans Slingshot. This is the C2 Matrix Slingshot. If this is in the way and you want to get rid of it, just close the panel. You saw that? Now over here, we have our virtual machine. Up here is the Control-Alt-Delete, right? Control-Alt-Insert is not going to work here. You actually need to click Control-Alt-Delete. And you're going to be prompted for a username and a password. I'm not going to say the password because I want you to see where the password is, because it's hands down the question I get asked the most, right? So up here where it says Notes, you see right next to Control-Delete, Notes. I click on that. It tells me the username and the password for the system is student. And right under there, it tells me the scythe and the vector credentials, because you are going to be using all of these through here. That is unicorn. So again, how do you find out the password? You click on Notes up here, and it tells you your username and the password. If you load another console, you can also click on Notes up here, and it'll tell you the username and the password for that, right? So you can change these consoles. There are 4 virtual machines. You only get console on 2 of them. So we're going to log into Unicorn here. We click on Notes. We see the password is student, type student, and it's going to log us in. Fantastic. Over on the right, over here, you see this here? Here is the manual. So the manual is a set of steps that you're going to go through. It's 1 through 21. So there's plenty for you to do, right? If you want to go on your own, it's self-paced, right? We give you a welcome. We do an introduction to command and control using Scythe, but the basics of command and control will work on other C2s as well, right? You have all of the Sans Slingshot C2 matrix there as well. So we're first going to do it in Scythe because it is the easiest setup you could possibly do. We're going to walk you through creating a campaign, setting up your HTTPS listener, setting up things like jitter and heartbeats and all that fun stuff, creating your payload, creating some automation. Scythe allows you to automate what occurs before you get, or as you get your shell. So for instance, if you like taking print screens, you don't have to do that manually. You can actually automate the whole thing. So we'll do that. And then you're going to download the payload, execute it, and interact with that system. You're also going to see some reporting. Then we turn our attention to detection. We're going to start because what that one payload that you created is going to do, it's going to beacon out to the site server every so often. So you're going to identify that by reviewing Wireshark. So we walk you through how to run Wireshark, how to enable the correct interface, how to use the filters, etc. Then we cover cyber threat intelligence. In this particular case, we're going to look at Rangeworm. Rangeworm was attacking hospitals. That's not cool. So we call them out. We went through everything that they do. And at the end of the day, they are not very sophisticated. So we're going to consume some cyber threat intelligence, learn about how Rangeworm works. Then you are going to emulate Rangeworm. There's 2 ways of doing that. Either 1, create your own adversary emulation plan based on what you learned, or 2, import our community threat, which is the largest public library of adversary emulation plans. So you can do that as well. Both options are there. Of course, you scroll through. Then we're going to talk about detection with Sysmon. Sysmon is the system monitor tool. It comes with sysinternals. We're going to show you how to install it. We're going to show you how to use a configuration. There's 2 available for you, Swift on Security and Sysmon Modular by Olaf Hartong from Falcon Force. So we're going to show you how to do that. You're then going to detonate another campaign, and you're going to view your Sysmon logs and figure out how to go through that. The last part is emulation of Ryuk. Ryuk has been a pretty sophisticated ransomware actor. So again, you have two options. Read through the cyber threat intelligence and create your own adversary emulation plan, or use the plan that we created. Now, do note that this plan is large. It takes about 15 minutes to go through the entire execution, which is still faster than the fastest time Ryuk actually went through an organization, which was 2 hours. And of course, we have documentation of all that. And then again, you go through Sysmon, you go through Wireshark, etc. Then we learn about tracking purple team engagements with Vector. There is a Vector install here. Just so we can see that, we are going to open up Chrome. You get Scythe through a web app, and you also get Vector. So give them a second, but they should come up. There is Scythe. There is Vector. How do we get the passwords for Scythe and Vector? Pop quiz. Who's been paying attention? In the notes. There we go. Andy's paying attention. In the notes, we got their unicorn. So you'll be able to log into both of these, and you will be able to go through all this fun stuff. So you go through Vector, you're going to be able to actually import your campaign into Vector and create these pretty cool things. Oh no, what did I do? I'll make sure Vector works. There we go. Oof, I got scared. So you might have to log in twice to Vector. I don't know, some token got expired or whatnot. I updated all these machines yesterday because, you know, YOLO. So I didn't actually test, but this is Vector. You're going to be able to go in and import your own campaigns, whatever you did, right? This is your playground. There's a domain controller you can move laterally to as well. So we walk you through all of that. And then we talk about updating TTPs. And we also introduced the SANS Slingshot C2 Matrix Edition, which is slightly more advanced, right? Scythe does make this easy for the attacker, especially to do repetitive things that you already know how to do. If you want to work and use Covenant, Empire, Faction, Coatic, Merlin, Metasploit, Silent Trinity, or Sliver, they're all here and available for you as well. There's walkthroughs. The link is down there for more walkthroughs. And then if you make it all the way to the end, you can download the CPE. You go up here to resources, and there you download your CPE for today. So lots of stuff for you to do. If you hear my talk for about an hour, you will still have time to go through all of the manual. If you don't want to hear me talk or just want to hear me talk in the background and go on your own, be my guest, right? You do you. If you don't know anything about purple teaming and want to listen in, then that's what I'm going to do now. So let me see if there's any questions. How long will you have access to the lab? You will have access until 4 p.m. Eastern time. And for you to know that, you can actually see it right up here. So you have 2 hours and 38 minutes left. 2 hours and 38 minutes. Let me see if there's any other questions before we go on. Is the lecture similar to the 1 hour webinar I did the other day? Probably. If it was called Purple Team Workshop, then yes. So I did it, the non-hands-on version for Asia Pacific last week. Also part of SANS SEC East. So if that's the one you saw, yes, exactly the same lecture with that goes through purple teaming. So if you already heard that, go for it. Go play with it. We also update our workshop quite a bit. So Ryuk is a fairly new, relatively new threat actor, right? The FBI, I think, sent the warning to hospitals in November of 2020. We're always updating it. Next time, we'll probably be doing a Gregor. which was a Threat Thursday that we released last week after working with the folks from Sophos on the threat intelligence there. So if you were coming back for more, then yeah, you're going to hear the same thing. So yeah, enjoy. All right. So I think that covers. Can you download the manual in any file format later? No, I'm going to give this for B-Sides Panama in Spanish, and VMware Learning Center actually doesn't let you like export it into any like decent format. I think you can export it to like XML, just for like importing and exporting, not actually for editing it. So I apologize for that. The manual is not. I mean, if you really want to do it, you could probably highlight little by little and just copy paste it. If anyone does that, do provide it back. I could probably do it at some point, but yeah, there's like no easy way just to like download the manual. So sorry about that. Oh, cool. Andy has volunteered to do that. So a lot of things are you know, like Wireshark is common stuff. Sysmon is pretty common. It's all things that have been documented before. Obviously, here it's all brought together. And then and there's also the how-to.c2matrix.com, which is a Git book as well. So there is plenty of documentation already out there. I'll how-to.c2 matrix. Let me post this up for you. All panelists and attendees. There we cover a lot of C2s and how to use them and whatnot. So that works as well. Obviously, it's not all put together nicely like it is for this workshop. So we'll get you that. All right. Sounds like everyone is good to go. So if you have questions, we are using Zoom. So post the questions in the Q&A. I have that up here. As well as the chat. Try to keep the chat down though, because that's how I'm helping people. And if you flood me, then I can't help anyone. But we should be good. All right. If you've never heard of purple teaming, what is purple teaming? Purple teaming is a combination. It's a functional team, a virtual team, if you will. There's very few locations and organizations that actually hire you as a purple teamer. I actually only know of 2 of them. Everywhere else, it's a virtual team, right? Where you have various people that are focused on what they like and what they're good at, like cyber threat intelligence, right? That's the team that goes and researches and understands your environment. They understand the threat actors that have the opportunity, the intent, and the ability to attack you. They understand the adversary behaviors. And of course, they share those normally with the Security Operations Center, also known as the blue team. Right? And the blue team is a catch-all phrase, right? You can't actually like go get a job as a blue teamer. It's generally like a Security Operations Center analyst or a hunt teamer or digital forensics and incident response or managed security services or managed detection and response or detection engineers. We're seeing that being in a job description lately as well. So that pretty much encompasses the defenders. And then the red team is the offensive team. In this case, they are in charge of emulating the adversaries. So how hard can this purple thing be, George? It sounds pretty easy. You take red and you mix it with blue and you got purple. Like, come on, man. Why are you overdoing this? Well, yeah, just getting red and offensive people and defensive people work together is not actually that easy. And that's partly our fault. I'll speak as a red teamer. And when I started, we were not very nice to the blue team. We were very egocentric. And again, that's not all red teams. But yeah, blue team did not like us because we kept going in and owning them and making them look bad. We weren't really collaborating with them. So if you put all of these folks together in an office, you think it'll all go nice. Look at all those smiling faces. Look at those smiling faces. Everyone's like collaborating and things are all happy and all that. And people are actually in the same room. But what would actually happen is a lot of fighting. And yeah, I just took this off the internet, so don't look too into the actual picture and what the heck is going on here. But that's what you don't want it to do. You want to be fully in control of what's going on. So one of the things I like to show you is a use case of an actual purple team engagement that we did. The client actually let us talk about this publicly. Obviously, we sanitized some stuff, but shout out to the National Motor Freight Traffic Association. They hired us for a 6-week purple team exercise. And don't think that you have to do 6-week exercises. You can do 2-hour-long exercises, right? But in this case, they hired us in an assumed breach scenario. So pretty mature organization. They do their pen tests, they do their vulnerability assessments and scanning, and they have some decent policies around patching and whatnot. So they want to see what would happen if we started inside their network, like someone getting phished. And we were hired to perform all 3 roles, which means we had people doing cyber threat intelligence, we had people doing the detection engineering, also working with their teams to understand their processes. How do they see alerts, and where do they see these alerts, and all that fun stuff. And then of course the offensive side as well. So the first week, what we did is we said, let's just baseline this, right? Let's start with just a synthetic malware, just like the one that you're going to create in that first scenario today, that just establishes an HTTPS connection. We're going to execute it just by double clicking in an exe, or maybe downloading a DLL and using run DLL. And then based on that, we'll see where we are. We'll see what detection we have. And then as we go, we start going up and sophistication. So on week 2, we did APT19. Week 3, we did bot trap. Week 4, we did APT33. Week 5, we did APT3. And then the final week was kind of free play of, based on everything we learned throughout these 5 weeks, what should we test now? And the hardest part of this entire ask was, do not spend any more money on technology. We are fed up with spending money and just throwing money at all these vendors and all these tools, and everything's next gen and everything's a silver bullet. None of that. $0. So we said, all right, this sounds like a lot of fun. Let's do it. So we did our baseline, and at the end of our baseline, we tested 65 unique adversary behaviors known as tactics, techniques, and procedures. And of those, 3 were detected. So there was an actual detection, there was an alert, there was a response to it. Fantastic. But that's only 3. And then 1 was blocked, which was pretty cool to see as well. But 94% of these adversary behaviors were not detected at all, not even logged locally, right? So a known threat actor in this organization would have been able to achieve their objective. So every week, we would also do detection engineering, right? Very collaborative. And by the end of the assessment, with $0 spent on technology, we achieved a 64% detection rate, right? Which is way better than when we started. Obviously, there's still work to be done, right? There's never a 100% secure, right? And the way that we did this in this particular organization was by enabling telemetry, in this case, Sysmon, which you're also going to do in this lab. And then their SIM was, or is, Event Sentry. So we actually worked with the folks from Event Sentry. It's a SIM we hadn't used before. And thankfully, that SIM had the capability of doing logic, doing security analysis, and allowed us to create alerts and be able to create a process for responding. So at the end, all of these threats would have been caught somewhere in their kill chain before having achieved their goal. So, just very high level, this is the value that you can bring by doing purple teaming, right? You work together. You're not spending on new technology. You're just improving what you have. So how did we get here? Well, many organizations start by doing vulnerability scanning, right? You grab a scanner, a Nessus, a Rapid7, a Qualys, right? You name it, there's a cajillion out there. And you scan your IPs, right? You start with your perimeter, find vulnerabilities there. You get a report with 2,000 pages. You hand it over to operations team and say, I'll be back in a week, bro. You better fix this stuff, right? And then, once you get a hold of your perimeter, you do the same thing internally. That leads to like 500,000 findings, right? Depending on the size of your environment. But again, no context, nothing. So then you say, all right, let's put a human in this. Let's do some vulnerability assessment. Let's validate the vulnerabilities and also calculate risk, right? Let's use CVSS and actually calculate the temporal and the environmental score. And then that way we prioritize what we need to fix. Great. That's improvement. You have brought people to work with technology and created a process. But we really don't know the business risk unless we actually exploit the vulnerability and like get an understanding of what we have access to. And that's where pen testing came in. And that was great. We found a lot of vulnerabilities there. We were able to further prioritize, further add business risk and context to our findings. But then if you look at how adversaries are actually getting in, it's not only through technology vulnerabilities, right? Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of CVEs out there getting exploited that get you access, but they're also going after people and process and looking at organizations holistically, right? That's where the red team came in. And again, we were doing zero knowledge engagements. The blue team didn't know we were coming. And then we just drop a report on their desk and be like, ha, 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 look at what we did. We are so good. And you guys are not. Right? And then they didn't like us and that wasn't cool. So then we said, what if we work together instead of doing, apart from doing these blind engagements or zero knowledge engagement once a year, why don't you all work together as new things come up? And that's where we started purple teaming. And finally brought in the cyber threat intelligence team that are very valuable in any organization because they actually understand your threat actors. And that's where adversary emulation came in. So this is in no means like step-by-step, right? Don't like stop doing the previous one. This is just how we matured. Others might do it differently, right? This is not set in stone. But really what you're seeing is the progression of thinking of only technology issues and common vulnerability and exposures, right? CVEs, to now thinking about tactics, techniques, and procedures, right? What happens once there is access, right? And that's the whole assumed breach. At some point, something's gonna not get patched on time and you're gonna get exploited. Or at some point, someone's gonna fall for a social engineering attack and download that payload, enable those macros, and have access, right? So what we say is that testing technology is not enough, right? It's all about people, process, and technology. That's what we're going to bring here. We're going to talk about people, we're going to talk about process, and of course, you're going to play with some technology. So real quick, red teaming and differentiating that from pen testing is important. I like the definition from the Red Team Journal here on the bottom right: the practice of looking at a problem or situation from the perspective of an adversary, right? Looking at that holistically. And the biggest difference here is that when we did pen testing and even bug bounty and you're finding those O days and writing exploit code, right? That's all awesome stuff, right? I'm in no means saying that that's not cool. That is awesome. But your customer is different. When you find those vulnerabilities and those O days, right? Your customer is really the engineers, the vendor, right? It's all very technology focused. For a red team, your customer is the blue team, and making them better by being able to test them, being able to measure them, being able to improve, right? So that's red teaming. Blue teaming, the defenders, right? Shout out to all the defenders. I don't know how many blue teamers versus red teamers we have out there. I'm glad we have all come together under these circumstances to collaborate. So appreciate that. The defenders are the MVPs, right? They are the ones in charge of identifying attacks, containing them, eradicating them, recovering. And they do this 24/7, right? Attackers are not sleeping, so neither are our blue teams. And as I had a little of experience, a couple of years working in a SOC, as well as now purple teaming, I kind of learned a little bit of how the blue teams work, right? Because that's important. If that's our customer, we got to understand them, right? And I brought this down to the most basic levels. Is logging is very important. You need to log relevant events, make sure that they're logged locally first, and then send them remotely to some sort of central log aggregator. Then go through those logs and have alerts based on various different behaviors, right? Various logic of what is known bad and what is known good. And then the response. And what I learned about the response is that even if a SOC level 1 analyst gets that alert that something bad happens, now we're introducing people, right? And people need to follow a process and respond. Of course, now we have automation, right? Those SOAR platforms. So adversary emulation really brings these all together, right? It's actually leveraging cyber threat intelligence and putting an attack together in an attack chain. That's what you're going to be doing with rangeworm and Ryuk, right? Known attacks that have targeted the hospitals in particular, right? And you can tell from my voice, I don't like that, right? I don't like anyone getting attacked, but in particular hospitals, right? Especially through everything we're going through, right? So understanding those threat actors, being able to emulate those behaviors is adversary emulation. And now the most important thing of regardless of where you are in offensive security, it is always and has always been about providing value, right? That's the whole goal. That's why you were hired, is to provide value. So keep that in mind as we go through. And really that is where we get to the purple team, right? Doing all of these in silos is great. They have value. I'm in no means talking bad about red teaming or pen testing or any of that. But I argue that if we bring everyone together and we collaborate in a purple team, we're going to be far more efficient. So how does this work? Purple team exercises. Virtual team, you bring everyone together to discuss a particular threat actor, emulate that threat actor, and figure out if your defenses and your expectations are met, as well as improve them. So generally, cyber threat intelligence will present a threat actor that has the capability, intent, and opportunity to attack your organization. The red team consumes that cyber threat intelligence and creates an adversary emulation plan. This is great. That's how you get approval from senior management that you're not just going full cyber and you're gonna, you're just let the red team go and do their stuff. Then you bring everyone together to the same table and you have a discussion. You ask, what are the expectations? And now here's where it gets really interesting. The expectations of senior management in any organization generally does not match the expectations of, say, the folks on the actual ground, like a SOC analyst or a hunt team or a DFIR person. They, the senior manager is going to be like, oh yeah, that phishing attack won't get through here because we use this. And then the SOC guy is going to be like, other SOC gal is going to be like, yeah, right. So document all of that. And then the red team emulates that TTP or that particular behavior while the blue team watches. So the blue team is learning how attacks work. The CTI team is learning how attacks work. The senior managers here are learning how attacks work. And then we change the roles. After the blue team saw what the red team did, now they share their screen and we see what they do. And that gives us a chance to learn, right? Because I can talk a lot about how detection should work, but every organization is different. How does the local system log? How does the local system send the log out to a log aggregator? Do you use Windows Event Forwarding? Do you use Splunk? Do you use FileBeat, right? We learn about all that. And then where does it go? And then what logic occurs? And then what happens next, right? So as you go through all of this, you are all learning and it's fantastic. So when do we purple team? All the time, right? No. You can purple team when you hear about a new attack, right? So for example, we have Egregor right now. They've hit 150 organizations that we know of. We might want to learn about who they're hitting if we fall in scope of that, which we probably do because Egregor goes after everyone. We might want to test that attack chain against ourselves. Or maybe we got new folks in the Security Operations Center, or we're onboarding a managed detection and response team, right? Or we have these new TTPs, right? We have this new vulnerability or a new blog post, right? That our friend Andy posted on his blog. Now we want to test that and see if we have any sort of detection. Well, instead of everyone working in silos, why not work together and do it like this, right? You can also do this before a zero knowledge red team engagement or after. We often call that a red team reveal or a red team replay, or really when you just want some collaborative culture in your organization. So lots of reasons to do this apart from the aforementioned ones. So if you are going to propose this to anyone, you need a framework and a methodology, because we like doing things that we know work. So a lot of senior folks know about the cyber kill chain, right, from Lockheed Martin, or my favorite kill chain, the unified one from Paul Poles. Shout out to Paul. Or if you're in financials, like I was in 100 countries and regulated by every one of those and their mothers and fathers and cousins and sisters, we got to do all of these. CBEST in the Bank of England, TIBER EU for the central bank of the European Central Bank. There was the Monetary Authority of Singapore, the Hong Kong Monetary Authority. Saudi Arabia now has a framework, right? So with all these frameworks, we said, look, we can't do 12 red team engagements a year. Like, that just doesn't make sense. Why don't we create one framework for the regulatory use of this in the financial services industry? And then we had another framework, right? For purple teaming, we released the public framework, the Purple Team Exercise Framework. You can download that right now. And then as far as actually mapping to adversary tactics and techniques, we use attack, right? So love the kill chain because a lot of senior managers understand how an attack works because of the cyber kill chain. And to this day, they ask you to map stuff back to it. So, you know, you should know about reconnaissance and weaponization and delivery and exploitation and installation and command and control, which are all fun. But between command and control and actually gaining that foothold inside of an environment to action on objectives, there's a whole bunch of other stuff you do. And that's why we like MITRE ATT&CK, right? MITRE ATT&CK has tactics at the top, that top row of reconnaissance, resource development, initial access, right? High-level adversary goals, followed by techniques and sub-techniques, which are how does this attacker achieve that goal, that tactic. And then if you go deeper, you get the actual procedures. And that's where you can have a whole bunch of different procedures per technique. So this is not a bingo card, right? It doesn't say bingo anywhere. You can't just like be like, oh, I can detect a group policy modification. That's green, check and move on. No, right? We actually, this will continue to evolve as new attacks happen. MITRE ATT&CK gets updated, new procedures are added, and we continually go through this. I counted, by the way, you all know how many techniques and sub-techniques there are in MITRE ATT&CK? 525, and a few more are coming after that SolarWinds attack, right? As far as what framework we're following here, we're going to follow the PTEF. That's the Purple Team Exercise Framework. It's free to download. We host it up on site. Yes, it has a marketing wall. If you don't want the marketing wall, then search on GitHub. It is MIT licensed on GitHub. So it's there, whatever is easier for you, download it. And yeah, we're going to go through that. So any questions so far? I think I'm going a little bit slower than usual because I spent some time demoing early on. I can actually see how everyone's doing. Not there. Over here. Oh, there. Entitlements. There we go. Let me refresh this page. See who's on. Sorry if your name's going to show. This looks like 44 people are on already. That's great. I also believe I can take a look at everyone in the class. Yes, Stephen has a point. You're not seeing orange worm under existing threats. You need to go to migrate threats. And the JSON for Orangeworm is in your downloads folder. So you're actually going to upload that JSON file. All right, cool. I see a lot of you are already in and are going through it while others have not opened it. So that's great. Glad that everyone's going through that. All right. Yeah, just post QAs. Try to post QAs in the questions in the question section, because I see some talking there as well. Oh, look at that. Andy updated the manual. Sweet. There you go. Fantastic. Beautiful. All right. We shall continue. So, roles and responsibilities. Generally, depending on how big your organization is, right? Not everyone might have all these teams, but generally you have someone that's in charge of information security or cybersecurity. They're going to be the sponsors, right? You're going to have to convince them that this isn't just you playing around and having fun with attack tools, but it's actually going to bring value. And then you have cyber threat intelligence. Maybe you have that as an internal team. Maybe you don't. This is an area where we focus a lot on to build the adversary emulation plans. So I like bringing guests on to Threat Thursday, for example, from various different organizations, from journalists, from Cyberscoop to Sophos and other organizations to gain that intel. And then you have managers, right? If you have an internal blue team or an internal red team, they need to be on board with this. Then, of course, you have all your participants from red, blue, and CTI, and you have a project manager. Now, if you're the one proposing this at your organization, you're probably going to have to be the project manager the first time, but I highly recommend you get actually someone that is a project manager to manage the project, because you're going to see how many moving parts we're going to have. There's actually a bit of prep work that we have to work on. So sponsors, you got to convince them about purple teaming. One of the talks that we are doing, is that in 2 weeks at CactusCon, is a deep dive into that use case of that 6-week engagement. So hopefully that will allow you to kind of show, look, this is what other organizations have done, or maybe watch the Purple Team Summit videos. But really, you got to just convince them to allow you the time and the resources to do one of these exercises. And like I said, you can start with just a 2-hour exercise. You can have 2-hour or week-long, day-long exercises, but really you need everyone together. Preparation is what takes the most, and preparation takes the most because when everyone is together, you're taking them out of their day-to-day. You want to be as efficient as possible during that time. So I like covering cyber threat intelligence. Again, big shout out. I tweeted this out this morning to Katie Nichols and Cody Thomas. This was a presentation back in 2018, but it really got us thinking about threat-led red teaming or adversary emulation. And these were the steps outlined: understanding the target organization, identifying the adversary that is likely to attack your organization, because they're going to be different than someone else's, gather the threat intelligence, extract the behaviors, the tactics, techniques, and procedures. Then you analyze and organize those, and then you create a plan. For creating plans, as I mentioned, we have the largest library of adversary emulation plans. It's free. It's on GitHub, and it has some pretty cool stuff in there. Now, when I say cyber threat intelligence, I'm not really talking about hash values or IP addresses or domain names. I'm talking about behaviors themselves, the TTPs, right? And shout out to David Bianco and the Pyramid of Pain, right? It pretty much says that as a defender, as you go up the pyramid, it gets harder and harder to detect and respond to these types of attacks, right? So if your blue team is having trouble with known domain names that are bad, then you need to up that game up, right? Because once you start talking about tools and actual TTPs, it's going to get even harder. Extracting TTPs, you read through a lot of threat intel and you highlight the TTPs. This does require you to have a good understanding of MITRE ATT&CK. So this is just an example of a FIR report that I went through and pulled stuff out. And yeah, it's not fun. This is one of the reasons why we ask cyber threat intelligence and those companies that do forensics to map to MITRE ATT&CK to actually tell us the procedure used, so we don't have to go through this and make it up ourselves. Attack Navigator is awesome for this. In the class, I think I show one of these. I'll actually just bring up one. I did one for egregor. So I like using MITRE Attack Navigator for it. Where is it? There we go. Add Navigator map. So this is egregor, and it's nice because it gives you, your nice little view of what's going on. Now you can also use Attack Navigator. Let me leave this page. You can go up here to create new layer, select enterprise, and then in the selection tool, you can actually select other threat actors. So if you want to look at, I don't know, APT32, we hit select, then I like changing them to red. And there you have the TTPs used by APT32 or whatever I used, right? So Attack Navigator is very useful for planning. But really, if you're going to show a senior manager this, just create a little table, right? Say, this is the plan. This is the threat actor. This is their objective. This is what they do for command and control, etc. So again, we have Threat Thursdays. It's completely free, right? Usually like every other Thursday. I don't want to promise too much, but yeah, about every other Thursday, we'll introduce a new threat actor. We'll consume the cyber threat intelligence for you. We'll map it to MITRE ATT&CK. We'll then create an adversary emulation plan and give it out to all of you on GitHub, right? Which has the largest community, the largest library, if you will, of adversary emulation plans. You can see Emote, egregor's there, and they're built out so that you can use most of these. Obviously they work very well with Scythe. You can import them and run them there. So rangeworm, this is the one that you're going to do. They are a low sophistication threat actor. They do a lot of living off the land. That means that they're going to use things from the operating system to identify various different things. So you're going to read up about them and do that in a bit. And then logistics, right? We're still talking about preparation, picking a location. Right now, you probably have to do all this virtually. Hopefully soon we're back to in person. And I did so you have to choose a platform, right? If you're doing it in person, fly people in, have them be there, right? Apart from just collaborating in the exercise, you can also, go out to lunch, go out to dinner, right? Like actually be human again, right? Which is very important for that culture. Now, target systems. I am a firm believer that we need to test in production, especially this kind of stuff, because we are testing detective controls. We're testing people. We're testing if people follow their process, right? So where are security analysts looking at? They're looking at their production tools. They're looking at their production proxy, their production SIM, right? So doing these in non-production is only training the person, right? If you want to do all three, people, process, and technology, you have to do this in production. So grab some operating systems, right? Get the builds that you use in your organization, whether it's endpoints, laptops, physical systems, VDI, cloud, whatever it is. Grab some systems, make sure that they're in production. Make sure that all the security tools are deployed on there, right? A few times we've been doing an exercise and they're like, oh, we forgot to deploy FTK on that, or we forgot to deploy Ncase on that. And then you have to sit there and wait for them to deploy some tool, right? For forensics folks, you might want to have live forensics tools on the systems that you don't have, just to do kind of like live defer on them. Makes you a little bit more efficient. Then target accounts, create actual accounts that work in the organization, that receive email, that can go out to the internet, right? Because you're actually going to be using all of these things. Then attack infrastructure. This can be a 2-day long class on how to set up attack infrastructure. At the highest level, you need a external hosting provider that, in this case, doesn't matter if it's attributable back to you because you're telling people what you're using, right? So use your AWSs and your Azures. If you're in the US, that should be easy. If it's not, the executive order that was signed yesterday might make this harder for you. We're still reading through that and figuring out what that means. Create your virtual machines, whatever operating system you want. Then create your web servers, set up your C2 servers. You're going to do some of that today. We actually already installed all the C2s for you because that does take time and generally is not as efficient as we like. And then you also have to like purchase domains and certificates and set up domain fronting and categorize those domains so that the proxies can go out to them, right? Many organizations don't just allow what's called naked IPs going out to the internet, right? And then, of course, you want to test all of this. Test. Make sure that this works before the purple team exercise so that you're not troubleshooting there, right? That was like one of the biggest reasons why we chose to go with Scythe, is because it is reliable and consistent and was not wasting anyone's time because it is an enterprise tool. Other tools you can use, there's a ton. The C2 Matrix has, I think, 65 different command and control frameworks that you can play with and allow you to emulate various threat actors and do various TTPs. So check that out. Like I said, we have the virtual machine available here. You can also download the virtual machine for after this workshop if you want to use that. In this case, we're going to use Scythe. We're an enterprise grade platform for doing adversary emulation. It's a command and control framework that allows you to create binaries on the fly. You're going to be doing some of that. You can deploy that anywhere you want. It does not call home. And the biggest thing is that it will consistently and reliably execute and automate those adversary behaviors. So if you're a red teamer, how many times have you had to go back and do the same thing again and again, right? Like that is a poor use of your time, right? You should be finding new TTPs and then figuring out how to script them and add them back onto your tool, right? That is what Scythe allows you to do. If you don't have a red team, then you will see how easy it is to create payloads and to emulate an adversary. If you have no red team capabilities or a dedicated red team, you can use this as well. So that's what we're going to be using here. As I mentioned, it's an enterprise command and control framework, and you'll be playing with it. It has a whole bunch of stuff. It has integrations with various tools. In this particular case, you're going to see Atomic Red Team and Vector has full integration with both of those. So now that you've created the campaigns, you need to create the playbook, because even though you have these payloads that will execute and do exactly the same thing, you need to mention how to deliver them, right? Are you going to do user execution? Are you going to do run DLL? Are you going to run from a PowerShell, right? So all of these that you see on the screen, you're actually going to be doing. And of course, we walk you through that in the manual, but we want to document that. And then your blue team, your SOC and your hunt teams need to be prepared as well. They need to make sure their security tools are reporting into the production systems, that the red team can access their C2s from wherever this is happening. And if you have threat hunters, they should have their playbooks drafted and ready to go. For the defer folks, you probably need to create an exercise case in whatever solution you use for tracking your incidents, right? I doubt you can just go and pull memory from any random system in your network. So remember, create that case and make sure that the forensics tools you use in your organization are already deployed on these target systems. And then time to kick off the purple team exercise. How do we kick it off? You bring in a sponsor. This should be a fun time. You introduce everyone, you motivate the attendees, you tell them that they're there to learn because they are the best of the best and they need to collaborate just like bad guys and girls are collaborating out on the internet. You want to collaborate as well. And then you go through your exercise flow, and you're going to do this. First, you're going to understand a particular threat actor. So we're going to learn a little bit about orange worm and Ryuk. Then you have a little discussion. What expected controls do you think will be set off, right? Do you think Sysmon is going to catch that encryption of all those files? Do you think your network controls are going to catch that C2 that's beaconing out every 30 seconds or 10 seconds? Then execute it, have the red team execute it, and then have the blue team go after and identify what ran and what didn't work. Share your screen throughout all of this, right? Track and measure various things and document those results. Remember to document what worked as well, right? It's not just about what didn't work. What worked is also good. One time we ran a particular TTP that we knew we had detection and alerting for, but that wasn't prevented. And from the time we executed it and saw it on the red team screen to the time that our SOC analysts saw it on their main display was about 32 seconds. And that is fantastic, right? Normally logs do not travel that fast across your environment, especially when you have security analytics and whatnot. So that's a great story to tell. Then for things that don't work, go ahead and document those and repeat, rinse and repeat over and over and over. Use vector for tracking. I love using vector because it shows you what improved and what didn't. Actually, the executive summary I gave early on with all the TTPs of what worked and what didn't, that was just a report that we pulled on vector. Vector is free. On the left, you have the red team details. On the right, you have the blue team details. Right now, as you go through these, you're going to be able to import the Scythe campaigns into Vector, and it's going to fill out most of this for you, which is pretty convenient for reporting purposes. And lastly, do lessons learned. Every time you do an exercise, you're going to learn something. The exercise coordinator should be dedicated to documenting what occurred. If you're doing multi-day, then send daily emails. Or multi-week, send status updates, right? Don't leave those senior folks that have you out doing this training and this purple team exercise. Don't keep them in the dark. Let them know what's going on. And yeah, you're going to end up with a lot of things that you probably can improve on, but you're going to have a team that is working together, and hopefully you continue and do these exercises more and more. And that's it. I told you it was going to be an hour. I know I rushed towards the end, but now it's all hands-on time. So are there any questions? All right. So if there's no questions, I am going to stop the screen share because you don't need to be looking at my screen anymore. If you need help, I can actually view your console. I can even take over your console. So let me know about that if you want to do that. I see a question here. What does integration with other C2 platforms look like and interaction with victim machines via Scythe? You are going to do that. So you're actually going to go through, you're going to deploy a Scythe payload, and then you're going to interact with that victim machine. So you're going to see what that looks like. Even in scenario one, you'll be able to see that. All right, so if you need me, use the chat or the Q&A on here. Andy's asking, I take it Scythe doesn't have an open source platform? We do not. We work very hard to make sure that the platform doesn't end up in the wrong hands. You don't get how to add orange worm DLLs into a victim machine. I will show you. So I am just going to go to a campaign that's already running, like Wasted Locker, and I'm going to download the DLL. So download the DLL, and then it says entry platform function name. You're going to need to copy that, and then click download. It's going to download the DLL. Let me go over to that page just to show you. There we go, orange worm. All right, here we go. So we downloaded the DLL. What we're going to do is open up a command prompt. There's a command prompt. We're going to change directly to where the DLL is, which is the downloads folder. We do dir again. There we see this wastedlocker.dll. So the way to execute this DLL is you do run dll32.exe, then the name of the DLL, which in this case is wasted locker, and then you do a comma, no space, and the entry point of the function, which, as Scythe told you, was platform client main. And then we hit enter, and it should go ahead. Yep, it ran. There we see a brand new agent, a brand new client just called in, process ID 5052. We can verify that by looking at our task manager, looking up that task ID. What was it? 5 something? 5052. There we see run DLL32 is running. It's going to do various things, right? You can open up Wireshark and take a look, see what's happening in the communication. But that is how you execute it right here on the bottom of step 11.